You're back because you want to hear the story again.
What story?
The story. Secret Chord Analogue.
Oh, tell us about it.
Yeah, right. Okay. So, beginning of the story is vinyl records, vinyl record cleaning. We do that with our own product. So, Record Restore, which is designed by us, manufactured by us up in the Blue Mountains. We export it. There you go, export industry. It's chemically engineered as a cleaner. So it's designed to target the binder substances that typically defeat other systems. So binder substances, fats, oils, nicotine, grease, airborne stuff. The thing about a vinyl record, so we'll do new records as a separate topic. So most records that people own are not new, they've got a collection, they go back years. The thing about a physical item is that it gathers stuff over time, even if it's supposedly closed in a sleeve. People talk about, I had a guy in here earlier, he said, I had all my records carefully boxed and under the house for some period, and I thought he was about to say, and then they got drowned by a broken water pipe, because I've had jobs like that. No, not that. No, they're fine. Came out, took them out, and they had small forests on them. And I said, yeah, well, it's a physical item. This is what happens over time. So Record Restore is particularly effective at being able to lift that stuff off the walls into solution, and then the solution dries to a pliable skin, and like a face mask, it's then peeled off. And 100% of what has been dissolved leaves the record. So contrast with other wet cleaning systems, and wet cleaning is the only way you can clean a record. You can't dry clean. Forget brushes, they're just good for surface dust. So you're wet cleaning, you're creating a slurry effectively in the groove. And the groove is V-shaped. The cutting head is V-shaped, whereas the stylus has a rounded end. So there's about 2 microns that exist between the end of the stylus and the bottom of the groove. So you've got sleeping debris down there that just never gets touched. Stylus races by overhead, it slumbers away. Then it gets lifted into a slurry. Boom. Now, if you don't remove 100% of that slurry from the groove, what you'll end up doing is shifting that minute particulate matter onto the groove walls where it gets left. Right? People have commented about how they've used one of these bathing systems, and all the cracks and popples, they seem to have been reduced, but it just sounds a little bit cloudy. Well, that's why. You get this fine stuff, comes up, fills in very fine nuance, the very finest nuances. So anyway, that's Record Restore, particularly doesn't do that, gets it off. Secondary benefit, if not a primary benefit, is that it defeats static electricity. Right, so that'll be neutralised to the extent that it exists on a record, and this is where it's very pertinent for new records. In fact, there's a video playing in the other room that'll show you a new record that I bought, a re-release of Joni Mitchell's Blue, right, beautiful packaging, all the rest of it, in its anti-static sleeve, and the anti-static sleeve was glued to the record surface by static electricity. So anti-static sleeve means that it doesn't create static when you slide it in and out. That's all it means. Some people seem to think it defeats static, or it can't. Static electricity is there until it's earthed or found a way to leave, which it'll often do through the cartridge when you're playing it. And that causes a lot of the snap and crackle and pop. Just that electrical discharge, up through the cartridge. So Record Restore defeats that. So what that means first up is that fine particulate matter that's held on the record surface by that charge, once the charge is gone, the particulate matter will let go. But until you defeat the charge, it won't. You have to defeat the static charge to be able to remove those particles. The trucking industry have found that they haven't been able to clean their trucks effectively until they got onto the fact that they needed a cleaner that defeated static electricity. They just end up moving dirt around anyway. So so we're doing that, and then we're leaving behind a surfeit of positive ions, which means that you can't put a charge back on that record. And on the video in the other room, you'll see me polishing a restored record with a piece of silk, and then running an electrostatic meter over it, no charge. So all in one treatment. So 3 minutes, put it on, both sides, and job's done. Job's done in terms of the challenges on the record, job done in terms of making sure it can't be reinfested easily. I mean, you can leave a record out and it'll get dusty, but certainly you won't have static electricity as an issue. So yeah, so that's the beginning of the whole analog thing. And then we're moving on, so we've got loudspeakers. These are made up at our facility in Wentworth Falls. In fact, this guy here, this mock-up, this is the Art Series Confluence system. So what that is a piece of hardware that's been butterflied. So the other half is, the mirror image of that. Yeah. So that's the Art Series. We call this the Decor Series because these will always be the same shape. Whereas the Art Series depends on the slab that we're working with. Yeah. Yeah. So that in the Confluence system is a subwoofer. You can see that's its power amp down there. And there's a driver behind there. So the thing about we call it the seamless sub because you tailor it. There are two controls on it. One is the roll off. Right? Now the signal coming out of this preamplifier has two outputs. One of the outputs goes to the amp that you're using, and the other output goes to this amp. Right? So what's happening here is independent. The satellites will always get the full signal. But down here, full signal comes in, but it's rolled off before it gets to the actual sub-driver, and you can pick that point, and that's pretty relevant to your room. And then the other control is gain, so the amount of oomph, if you like, that's coming out of that. So you can tailor the sub, which is very flat in its response, tailor it to how your room is interacting with the main speakers. So you end up with a really nice response curve there. Right, so that's Confluence. So the Wallamai, so-called, bass reflex, and that's it. You don't really need a sub with that at all. So that's that one. Amplifier kits. So yeah, our amplifiers are kits. They're all kits, and there are three ways that you can own one of these amplifiers. You buy the kit and you build it at home. You come up to Amp Camp in the Blue Mountains, and you do a one-day workshop, supervised workshop, where you're protected from all of the mistakes you want to make. You're not allowed to make them. And by you get to the end of the day, you've got a working amplifier. Well done, you. And we'll build it for you. So there's three ways. So there's three methods that defeat any excuse that you got not to own one. Now there's several different kinds of amplifier here. There's the triad. All of them bar this one and its pair, because this is a monoblock, so that's one channel. The other channel's behind you. I haven't brought it over yet. A single-ended triodes. This is the simplest form of triode, 300B. Very simple tube, many decades old. Much reputed for its handling of mid-range and upper mid-range. So nice vocals, nice natural instruments through here. Then we come down to that's the 8850, and it's taking pento tubes, so as opposed to triodes. Now you can run a pento tube either as a triode, and that's switching through to how it handles the output transformers, or in what's called ultralinear, which is a little beefier, kind of makes use of both sides of the tube, and that's fully controllable. And so it's a nice flexible amp. You can use it all kinds of ways. A lot of fun actually, and you can roll different tubes through it. So what do I mean by that? So at the moment this has got KT 150s, and there are different grades of tube, and they run different amounts of current through their basic plate, and that's determined by the switching, and the amp itself handles what's called biasing. So if you ever run into someone who says, "Oh, you got a bias tube amps," you don't with the Elekit ones. It does it itself, except for these push-pull, really powerful ones, and there's the facilities are actually on the front. It's very easy to do. You don't have to do it very often, so it's almost neither here nor there. So there's that. There's the 8400 behind you. Nice little amp, that one. Sits on only a square foot of bench space. You can run it from a high-level source like a CD player, but if you want low level, then you need a preamp for it. Yeah. Okay. That's probably all I think I've covered all of that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to loop back to record cleaning, and I'm going to play you a demonstration record where some of the tracks have been record restored and some haven't. All right? So, it's a 1965 recording. Some jazz, a guy called Bud Powell, apparently playing in Paris, according to the record cover. Now, the thing that makes it an interesting study is its cover, which I've managed to, there it is. So I bought it as a second-hand record. And you may be familiar with the gradings. I think Discogs use it. It's described here as a VG plus VG plus, both sides. Supposed to be very good. Plus. Right, so you make your own mind up about that, because I'm going to play you the VG plus and then the clean tracks, which probably should be called RR plus. So, first point, very, very quiet. Feel for that. I'm going to move to the end of track 1 and let it run into track 2. Comes the dirt. So you'd be thinking, that sounds okay. It's diminished from the first track. I'm going to move to the third track, which has also been played. how that has now in fact been raised a grade over what had been called VG+. Yeah. Okay. The life of vinyl records. Here's a topic. I watched a YouTube video the other day with a fellow who made a study of this. It's called the 3-record wear test, if you want to look it up. And in it, what he did was come up with a methodology for comparing the impact of different turntables and their styluses on the record. Long story short, he lined up 3 turntables of different qualities. First one, 0.7mm conical stylus tracking at 5.5 grams. Second one, a 0.5mm conical stylus tracking at 3.5 grams. Third one, a elliptical stylus tracking at 2.5 grams. And he found 4 identical copies of a record that had never been played, and he lined them up on turntables like this with a closing lid and an external start button, and he then played them 50 times over 2 months, including twice on weekends. And he did that to research or debunk the theory that you can't play a record or shouldn't play a record more than once in 24 hours. Yeah? So at the end of those 50 plays, he had his 4th untouched copy, and using his direct drive Technics turntable and a very high grade stylus, he then compared those 3 records with the unplayed record to identify the wear factors that had been caused by these cheaper cartridges and various grades. And you can see it on the video. It starts with a clean one, and then you'll see the little banner. It changes to the name of the various turntable, the source, right? And the change that was on display there was 0. Absolutely no difference between the unplayed album and the other 3 albums played on the different turntables at different weights with different cartridges. Absolutely no difference. Apart from a tiny little deviation at 18K of about half a dB, which you wouldn't be able to hear even if you could hear that high. So, the takeaway there is a clean record played with a undamaged stylus doesn't matter. You're not going to injure your record, which is really interesting, because I think back to the 90s where you were we were sold this idea that the compact disc was indestructible. Use it a coaster, bull. Compared to a vinyl record, might get a scratch on it, you can still play it. You get a scratch on the CD, that's it. It won't play past that point because the laser can't get past it. It doesn't know where to go. It's useless. So anyway, the vinyl record is essentially a fairly tough thing if you're looking after it correctly. Now, there was another question answered in his research, and that was how many times can you play a record until it demonstrates wear? And a magazine Electronics something or other, had actually researched this, and they'd taken a clean new record and they played it until they figured they could hear wear. And that number was 833. 833 plays before you could hear evidence of some wear. Maybe higher frequencies were not quite as sharp as they used to be, that sort of thing. But it still sounded great compared to a brand new record which was dirty. And how many times did they play that until you heard wear? 133. So about 6 times less life than the clean record, and it sounded fuzzy. So actually it was gone. Now here's the thing though, how did they make that record dirty for the test? Answer, they left it uncovered for 4 days. And that was enough dirt to shorten its life by a factor of 6, if not permanently. Yeah. So anyway, I found that highly revelatory, given that I'm in the record cleaning business. Yeah. Okay, so enough about records. Loudspeaker systems, we've got the Confluence open baffle, 97 dB, so it responds really well to not a lot of watts, which is good because we don't get a lot of watts out of most of our tube amps. The 95 dB bass reflex there, make both of these up at Wentworth Falls. They're available for purchase, and the tube kits, well, come up and make one, make it yourself. Yeah, that's what we do.
Who makes those drivers?
I source those overseas. I can't say they're made in this country because we don't make anything in this country. Now, what are we going to play next? I'll tell you what I'm going to do. On the topic of old vinyl, I'm going to go back and pull out. This is my 1973 copy of Machine Head, Deep Purple's Machine Head. So this has been played 11 squillion times on every low-cost rig that I've ever owned. Right? The one thing I did do over all those plays was I always used a dust bug, which was a little arm with a brush on the end, which would traverse the record, while the arm was traversing. And that kept all the, stopped fluff and stuff building up on the record. And of course, subsequently, it's been record restored. So this is what a 50-year-old, many times played record sounds like if you look after it. Gentleman here, that's my original 1973 copy of Machine Head, which has been played on every inexpensive rig I've ever owned 11 squillion times. And the point about playing it was to as a statement on vinyl maintenance. So one of the things I did on all my records over the years, I always used a dust bug, which is a little brush on the end of an arm that would track across the record, and that really kept the majority of the dust off. But subsequently it's been record restored. This is our product, and that's what it sounds like today. So what I've got over here is the 50-year reissue. So I'll play that now, and you can compare and contrast. Yeah. So apart from the remastering, there's not a lot of difference there, is there?
I don't know. To me, there was.
Yeah?
To me,
Describe it.
it sounded more vibrant.
Right.
This new one.
Yeah.
It might be the remastering. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, there's a bit of that, and certainly the percussion has been brought forward over what it was.
Yeah.
But in terms of background noise, and I'm not suggesting for a moment the old record is a brand new record.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about the benefits of maintenance and care. And on top of that, of course, the other reality is in terms of a lot of that background stuff, that's gone because Record Restore took it off. Now, you weren't here earlier, so I'm going to go back and play this 1965 recording that I bought secondhand, and it's graded VG plus VG plus. So what I've done is I've used Record Restore on tracks 1 and 3 only. So I can play you what the VG plus allegedly sounds like, and then I can play you what the RR plus sounds like.
Okay.
So this is clean. Right, now I'm going to fast forward to the end of track 1. Here's the dirt. That shimmer's gone on the piano, so I'll move on to track 3. So in terms of the equipment, I'll just introduce you a bit to what's on here. So this is a $800 turntable. I've replaced the stylus with an elliptical version of what was in there. So that was probably about a $60 item from LP Gear over in California. So not special in terms of pickup. I'm using this phono stage as opposed to the phono stage here. This guy is a twin moving magnet input, and one of them can be converted to moving coil by the installation of 2 specialist Lundell step-up transformers. So if you're after a moving coil solution, that's particularly good. The other thing that's most interesting about this unit is it has 50 dB of gain. Down here, 28 dB of gain, and yet it's dead quiet. So it's a very nice phono stage. Phono stage only, it's a preamp, so you could, for instance, if you're only playing vinyl, you could run from there to there straight down to one of the power amps, because you can probably notice there's volume controls on these guys. So yeah, so that's quite a possible scenario. But by going through a dedicated preamp, you've got several inputs, which can be quite useful. And in terms of what we're doing here in this setup, there are 2 outputs, pre-out jacks, 2 sets. One of them is used to drive power amp, and the other pair is used to drive the sub amp. Now, so what that means is, when I use the volume control here, I'm controlling the feed to the power amp, and I'm controlling the feed to the sub amp as well. Okay, so in other words, both are getting full signal. There's no roll-off happening, one between the other. When you're adjusting the sub amp, you have the ability to determine where it rolls off, going to the sub driver. So this one's currently set, yes, it's going to be about 120 hertz, something like that. Rolls off after that. And then on there also is a gain control. And so you'll use those to tune the sub to your room and to the speakers it's talking to. So you can end up with a pretty flat response up through there, which is why we call it the seamless sub, which becomes quite seamless when you get the settings right. Yeah. Okay, so now that, because we've got this 2 separate outlets here, this is a single sub arrangement. You can do 2 as well. You can put one on the other side, and you just split the feed. So for a lot of recordings now, of course, lower register notes, they're pretty directionless, and usually they're kind of somewhere between the 2 drivers. Older records, they tended to start, when stereo first started, they record on different channels. I mean, you go to Sgt. Pepper's, you can hear Paul over here and John's over there. So, yeah, I mean, quite good for that. So to the Confluence, open baffle, 97 dB. You get this marvellous sense of spaciousness as a result of having the rear wave come back to you off the walls. It needs an appropriate room, of course. You couldn't do this if you had a big open plan and you only had one corner available. What are you going to do with the other one? So, but in a room with 3 sides like this, yeah, highly effective. For that spaciousness, you kind of, I'm sitting in the front row and the orchestra is just right there in front of me. The Wallemize, not 95 dB in a bass reflex enclosure, doesn't need subwoofer. The amplifiers, you can own one of the kit amplifiers. All the amplifiers we handle are kits from Elekit in Japan or a local provider here in Sydney. Been carrying their gear for about 10 years, and people own one of 3 ways. They build it themselves. They come to Amp Camp up in the mountains and do a supervised workshop where you're not allowed to make any mistakes, and you go home with a working amplifier. Well done you. Third option, we build it for you. We have configured some full systems out of the various components here. On the black display out the front, there's a QR code to show them all to you. Special discounts on this week if anybody's interested in a full system supply and installation. It's all configured as one. And that's probably all the messaging I've got. Yes, sir.
Kits?
Yes.
Any SMD components, or is it
No.
all through the whole?
Yes. Yeah, all through whole. Yep. Yeah.
And they're valve based, so it's not
Yep.
solid state based?
Correct.
Yeah.
Which is not to say that there isn't the odd transistor in certain points around the power supply areas, but no. No.
So even this
Even the pre, yeah. In fact, if I roll the cover back, You'll see the 6 tubes are horizontally
Oh, yeah,
arranged
so
down
it's,
there.
Yeah.
The little protective cans.
Yeah.
Actually, speaking of the design of this, the volume control in this preamp is quite innovative as well, in that as you turn the volume down, it raises the gain. So as the overall volume
Inbuilt loudness.
comes down,
Yeah.
you don't lose the strength of signal.
Yeah.
And as you turn it up, it backs off the gain, so you don't end up with lots of hum.
Right.
You know. So yeah, it's really very clever. Makes for a very nice listening experience.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I went next door and
Okay.
got a bit of the spiel, and I thought
Yeah.
very interested.
Mm.
Interested.
Yeah, right.
But,
Yeah.
I saw a mate in one of your in your display, Craig. I can't think of his surname, but he's in your promo video.
Craig Field?
No.
No?
He's in your promo video anyway, and I thought, oh,
Yeah.
I'll contact him.
Okay. Which subject matter was it? Was Amp Camp?
Yeah,
Yep.
Ad Camp.
Amp Camp. Okay. So there's the one fellow there, the main builder. That's Rob Logue.
Yeah, no, this would have been a customer. Would have been
Oh.
a customer.
Oh.
One of your builders.
Oh right. Yeah. Okay. Meyer.
Craig Meyer, that's
Got
it.
Yeah.
You got it. Yeah.
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 Yeah, we had a bit of fun in that the amp that he built took home.
Yeah.
Given the loudspeakers he was using, he was having great difficulty getting out of it what he wanted,
Yeah.
and eventually we managed to work it out. I can't remember how at the end of the day. Craig and I had some fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
Pleasure.
And you're presenting to us in a couple of months.
Right. Yes, in June.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
you'll hear it all again.
So, yeah, that's right.
Actually, I'll have some more interesting news for you, mate, because in May I've been invited to address the Australian Sound Recordings Association,
Yeah.
which is one of those groups that has representatives across all kinds of levels of the sound industry. So, yeah, they want to hear about Record Restore.
Yeah.
Mm.
Good. Excellent.
Mm.
Thank you.
Thank you. What do you feel like hearing?
Here I am again in this mean old town, and you're so far away from me. Now where are you when the sun goes down? You're so far away from me. You're so far away from me. You're so far I just can't see. You're so far away from me. You're so far from me. Alright. I'm tired of being in love and being all alone when you're so far away from me. I'm tired of making out on the telephone 'cause you're so far away from me. You're so far away from me. You're so far I just can't see. You're so far away from me. You're so far away from me. Alright. guitar on the MTV. That ain't working, that's the way you do it. Money for nothing and you choose for free. No, that ain't working, that's the way you do it. Let me tell you, damn guys ain't dumb. Maybe get a pistol on your little finger. Maybe get a pistol on your thumb. We got to install microwave ovens, custom kitchen deliveries. We got to move these refrigerators. We got to move these color TVs. The little faggot with the earring and the makeup. Yeah, buddy, that's his own hair. The little faggot got his own jet airplane. The little faggot, he's a millionaire. We got to install microwave ovens, custom kitchen deliveries. We got to move these refrigerators. We got to move these color TVs. Move on, move on. Install microwave ovens, custom kitchen deliveries. Got to move these refrigerators. Got to move these color TVs. Look at that, look at that. I should have learned to play the guitar. I should have learned to play them drums. Look at that mama, she's got it sticking in the cameraman. Look at that, so. And he's up there. What's that? Hawaiian noises. He's banging on the bongos like a chimpanzee. Oh, that ain't working. That's the way you do it. Get your money for nothing, get your chicks for free.